Welcome, everybody. We got another great podcast today. Today, we're talking about a weekend of insight, how you can find out how to get better at CrossFit, how to improve your fitness, leaning towards the performance side and the CrossFit side. Sam's drinking, I believe, a Spindrift.
That's our title sponsor for the episode.
It's a co-sponsor.
Co-sponsor with Spade.
Yeah, Spade's great. It's delicious. Check it out.
Use code Roman. Great.
It is
grapefruit only and lemon.
Yeah. Okay, I don't. It's almost like too pulpy, too like too acidic for me almost. I don't know. Use code Roman for Spade to pay full price and support your boy. There's no discounts, just it's good stuff and it's fairly priced. But yeah, we're going to be talking about some training. Another cool little thing I just found out is, do you wear knee sleeves ever when you train?
No, not anymore.
Yeah, if you're competing or if you really need them, Rock Tape knee sleeves. They have some of the best knee sleeves. I'd say they're amazing, really tight, but still move pretty well for CrossFit. I like the 5 millimeters. I wear mediums. On their website, they used to be like $60, anywhere between $50 and $60. I would go on Amazon and you could get like their, last model, for $24.
Wow.
One pair, which is great for any pair of knee sleeves. They started going up on Amazon. I was getting worried. And it's been about a year. I need to get some new pairs. So I just started doing some searching. If you go on Target right now, they're $16 for a pair.
Wow.
I don't know how. I ordered 2 pairs just
nice.
to be good for a couple of years. Just thought I'd let everyone know.
I used to wear the blue ones. It's like Reband or something.
Reband, yeah.
Yeah, I like those. Those are great. They're tight.
Yeah, I haven't seen those in a while. And they only made 7 millimeter for a while.
Okay.
5's kind of a good blend. You can use it for a little bit of everything, but they have 7 as well if you need them. But yeah, cool. Sam just had a cool trip to New Jersey to something with an R and ends with a K, maybe. Where is it again?
Oh, you mean Hoboken?
Hoboken.
It's just on the other side of the Hudson River. So New York City you can see it from pretty much where you're at the gym. Yeah, fairly close. So it's very close to New York City. So I usually tell people it was in New York because people don't know New Jersey.
New York, New Jersey. He was there hosting a camp. And what was the before we get into the workouts, how the camp went? Why did you host this camp?
So I hosted one at the same location in January. We did a quarterfinal specific camp. It was 3 days. We did maybe 7 events. I can't remember off the top of my head. We did quite a bit, maybe 8. And one of my clients, Austin, shout out to Austin because he'll probably listen to this. He helped create that camp in January. It went really well. We had over 20 people, a lot of fun, good space. And when we were chatting, I don't know, maybe in April, and throwing around like, oh, why don't we do another one in the summer, but like a 2-day, which is more of the standard type camp I'll do. And so we threw around some dates and came up with this past weekend, which was end of July. And we set it up. And again, a really good turnout, good people, and a really good weekend. Lots of learning, lots of fun, and good to just see a lot of my clients. I think we had over 20 signed up, and then 3 or 4 of them sustained last minute injuries, which usually happens. People get nervous and they don't want to show up. One person had a legitimate excuse because he was watching his children and they're both young. So I can understand that. So that was okay. He got off cleanly, but the other people had weak excuses. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I just love being able to see people in person, especially my clients, and share some knowledge that might be helpful for them with their fitness pursuits.
Okay, cool. So was there anything else, like priorities of the camp? Like, was this like we tested a lot of off-season things you would normally test with clients, or was it all encompassing? Where were you? What would you want someone to take away from it by the end of it, in terms of, maybe not the conversations as much, and the touches one-on-one, but maybe with the events?
I would say the goal is to give people a fairly comprehensive insight into their fitness with a slant towards CrossFit. I usually market it or talk about it as though if somebody, they don't have to be competitive or really into CrossFit in a competitive sense to do the camp. You can still do it if you're a normal gym goer. But it's geared towards giving people who want to compete a good amount of insight into their fitness, impossible holes or areas that need improvement based off of ratios and lifts and other tests that I have them do, that I have a lot of data points on. So I can give them an educated guess on where they're at relative to the field and what they probably need to do to get better. So it is more comprehensive, and usually it's great if somebody does it in the summer, when for most people they might be working on particular components of their fitness, as opposed to doing one in the winter time or closer to the open or quarterfinals, because they're going to be in more competitive shape. So some of the tests I have in there, you'll see different, differences in scores based upon the time of year, just because you're going to train different priorities. And so that's a good thing. We want to see variability in those results. So a lot of my clients, because I had a lot of younger guys there who were working on developing strength, and a lot of the strength metrics we tested have been going up, which was great to see, because that was something we were prioritizing. So time of year is a nice component of the camps as well.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. And I think just getting together for a camp every once in a while is good for the communal aspect, learning from others. Maybe if the young guys are there, there's someone more seasoned or more well-trained, they can, pick up on small things from them.
Yeah. And it's great too, because you're just surrounded with people who take their fitness a little bit more seriously. It's a priority in their life. They have similar aspirations as you. So, and you guys, you can resonate with these people, and this feels like you're making good friendships, and because a lot of them either train alone or train a little bit isolated just because they're not in a group or a group class. So it's just a nice way of like, oh yeah, you do what I do, that's great. And build relationships. So it's all around positive. Especially the pizza, we go for dinner on Saturday night. It's a good time. Go take people out for some pizza. Grimaldi's, just because we have a big group of people. So it's like, it's a Saturday night. You're kind of limited when you got like 15 people. Well, you got 15 people. You got to make it work. It's decent.
You should have gone to the Portnoy map and seen look for a high score in the area and just gone straight to it.
Yeah, we could have, but alas,
sure
we didn't. Maybe next time.
Yeah.
It was good. It was decent.
Right. Let's get into the workout. So,
okay.
When did you have a little chat to start it off? Or was it like, hey, these are just kind of the events we're about to get into, and then you'd chat about them after?
So I have a PDF that includes all of the events. It includes a lot of notes that we talk about the events, and I send that out to everybody so they have that, so they can print it out, fill in their results, take notes, or keep it as a PDF on their computer or tablet. So when we start, it's not we don't do a big talk. It's more of like an overview, because they already know what the weekend's going to look like, the schedule of everything. So it's more like, okay, here's what we got going on in the morning. That's what we're going to be doing. Just kind of going over logistics, and then we put people in groups. The groups are like 4 to 5, just so you'll be lifting with these people, working out with these people, to just make it a little bit more less chaotic. Because once you're over 20 people, if it can get out of hand really quickly, because so many moving parts. But yeah, not a huge talk up front, kind of save those for post sessions, and then we get into
How many people were there?
So we had 17 that were there, and then the 4 runaways.
All right, let's get into Saturday AM and PM. So Saturday AM, a lot of lifts, getting in there. You're feeling fresh in this order and going to town. So what any highlights from the AM session or highlights, and then what was the reasoning behind all of it?
Yeah, it's funny because I always, every camp, or I should say every 2-day camp, I do these 4 lifts first for multiple reasons. One, almost everyone PRs at least 1 lift, so it gets them in a good mood. They feel good. They're like, all right, there we go. Let's get the momentum going. You're fresh. You're excited. Adrenaline's going. So performance is going to be as optimal as it could be. So it's a perfect opportunity to really push it and see what happens. So I do that first. Also, there's a lot of great talking points I can get from that. So we discuss 2 ratios in particular. We look at the snatch to back squat ratio, and then we look at the bench press to pull up ratio. So the snatch to back squat, I want 63 to 65%. That would signify good balance between speed and strength. And inevitably, you have people who are really high, so maybe close to 70%, which means they're very fast but not very strong. And then the opposite, you have somebody in the 40s or low 50s who are very strong but not very fast. Usually the first bucket, you have somebody who's fast but not strong. They're very they're fast. They move quick. They have good elasticity, but it's hard for them to express force with a heavy load, let's say. So those individuals, assuming mechanics are good, sound, you need to put a big bias on developing their strength and their ability to create force to express force. So we had a couple of good examples in the group. So we discussed, and of course, both of them were my clients. So I shared with things I'm doing in the design and why we do it that way to try to bring up that ratio so it's closer to the 63, 65% range. And on the flip side, we had a few people, one a client of mine and one not, where it was really low. So they had great strength, but they didn't have great expression or speed with the snatch. Mm-hmm. And for one gentleman, it was solely technique, efficiency of the movement. Like he's only been snatching for maybe a year and he's already in his 30s. So it's going to be a very difficult acquisition of that skill. So a lot for him, which we talked about, was you just need to practice the movement a lot. You got to learn how to actually move your body around the bar and get into the right positions so you can express the strength you have. So your strength is locked up because of your lack of skill with the movement. And then for my client, it's similar, but his proficiency of the skill is much better than this other guy. So for him, it's just a matter of continuing to practice the movement and just getting more exposure to the movement at moderately high percentages because his technique's getting pretty sound, but he just lacks exposure to it. So we don't have to do a ton. He'll just keep getting better and better at the snatch because we can back squat 385 and he snatched 195. So he's like 50, 60 pounds away from where he should be. And it's just a matter of just practicing the movement. And the 195 was a PR. Like I think the most he's hit, we've been working together for maybe 3 months. He hit 175. It was like power snatch into an overhead squat, one of those. So the 195 was solid. Like that was good progress. And that'll just keep going up. So that's a really insightful ratio because it'll just guide you more appropriately in the training and the approach to what, or not the approach, but the thought process around what do I need to be biasing? What can I relax on a bit? And it's been really helpful for me with a lot of my clients. Like, hey, I don't need them to be snatching that much or clean and jerking that much. Like I need I need to push the strength. And of course, if the percentages in the lifting, the snatch and clean and jerk are too high, it's going to influence your performance with back squatting, deadlifting, front squat, overhead squat. So you have to be mindful of managing the amount of tension you're going to put on the system in the week. So if you know that, okay, we don't need to snatch that much, but we need to squat a lot more, then you're just going to pull back the volume, and that helps a lot. So that's very insightful. Do you want to jump in before I shift to the bench press pull up?
No, I think that's good. But yeah, I mean, the recap, basically the snatch and back squat, you have a strength ratio that you like to use to kind of decide whether they need to get better at one or the other. And that can kind of tell you more about characteristics, not just necessarily the movements themselves. And then now you're saying the other two, bench and pull up, you have a ratio between those as well.
Yep. And just to give context, because people ask this question, which is great, and I like that people ask this, because they'll ask like, well, how do you get the ratio? Where does it come from? So the snatch back squat, I don't know off the top of my head, but I think there's some connection to the weightlifting world. I'd have to look more closely at some of my notes. The range that they want the snatch to back squat for like elite weightlifters. But I'm pretty sure the genesis of that comes from that world, along with Charles Poliquin. Poliquin had a big influence on structural balance and strength ratios. He, I think, to my knowledge, is one of the first people to pioneer that with performance athletes. So a lot of the ratios I use come from material I've learned through his work and his courses and content. But I do have weightlifting books and manuals that have percentages, because they use those quite a bit in their training, because that's a big part of building the athlete for weightlifting, is ensuring that your strength is matching your speed and vice versa. And if there's an anomaly, we're working on that. So that's just to give people context around where those come from. And now that I've been doing this for a while, and my colleagues and a lot of people inside of the ecosystem I've been inside of, we have thousands of data points. So we have a good understanding of what that range should be for a competitive CrossFitter, which is, again, that 63, 65% is pretty good. That's a pretty good range that you want to be inside of. So that's for that.
Bench press pull
Go
up.
ahead. Yeah. So bench press pull up. So it used to be close grip bench press, but then in 2022, the quarterfinals had bench press as part of the other total, which was one of the events, which was might have been the second event. I don't know exactly what event it was. All I know is I had everybody do it first for obvious reasons. But the standard was you couldn't have your hands more than like 40 inches or something apart. Do you remember off the top of your head? Because you did it.
I want to say that's right.
40 inches, maybe.
It might have been, honestly been, I guess it could have been 40.
I felt like you could go almost to the knurling.
Yeah, it was very close to the knurling mark. Your pinky basically could get close to the knurling mark.
Yeah, which is, I would say, a fairly maybe aggressive to moderately aggressive width for bench press. Mm-hmm. So before that, most people would be bench pressing close grip to really work the tricep and the shoulder. But when that came out, it was like, oh, okay, so they actually want to test this. And we know just by, if you bench press, you just look at the best powerlifters in the world. They're not bench pressing with their hands 12 inches apart. They're bench pressing, outside of shoulder width or even wider if they're using a bench shirt. So for most people now, I suggest that they do like a shoulder width, slightly wider than shoulder width grip. That's, of course, going to involve the chest a little bit more, and it's just going to will also make the range of motion a little bit less, and will allow you to build that movement a little bit more, I wouldn't say comprehensively, would be the right word. So now with the ratio, I have it as just bench press to pull up, whereas before it was close grip bench press to pull, but I haven't really changed the The ranges, I've kept them the same. And so the range is 95 to 100%. You want your bench press to your pull up, and your pull up includes your body weight.
Mhm.
So if I weigh 200 pounds, I do a 100-pound pull up. That's 300 pounds. So then my bench press needs to be 285 to 300. So then you're looking at balance between the pressing musculature and the pulling musculature. So on opposite sides of the shoulder joint. And that's a good ratio for just looking at not only absolute strength of the shoulder, but just also shoulder health. Because if you do see a big discrepancy, whether the bench press is really weak or the pull is really weak, that can just give you insight on where I might need to be directing my energy and the training to make that a little bit more balanced. Especially with CrossFit, because you do a lot of pressing. You need to do a lot of pressing. You need your shoulder to be flexed a lot. So you're inverted often. You're doing a lot of horizontal pressing, burpees, and whatnot. So making sure that your pulling strength is real adequate is really important, because that's definitely probably something that gets, I don't want to say neglected, but people are surprised when I tell them how high the pull up one arm needs to be. Because I think people, especially if they've been in the CrossFit world for some time, they don't think of like a weighted pull up. They think more of like volume of pulling.
Mhm.
And that's a problem because you're putting the cart before the horse. So you want to have a really strong pull in the form of a one arm weighted pull up, pronated grip. And then that now allows you to go out and do more dynamic volume of those movements. So that's another really great strength ratio that I like to use.
Okay. So Saturday AM, we're hitting the lifts, get a few PRs. We're feeling good. Take a 2-hour break, maybe play, eat some food, play some Catan, or maybe,
What a great game.
shoot some craps or something. Then we
Yep.
got Saturday PM now, and we're doing the 23.1, which has been based on was it in the open 3 times now, or just 2?
Just twice. 2014, because I remember doing it, and then they brought it back in 2023. So it's been in there twice, but probably one of my favorite open workouts. Just
Great
because
workout.
it's simple. Yeah, it's simple. The volume's not too aggressive, but you can quickly see a lot of separation from those that are capable versus those that aren't. And so in the past, I've done like a muscle up test. I've done a handstand push up test. I've done a row repeat test in the PM on Saturday. And I know all those are good tests. We can get some good insights, but I wanted to give people like a good work capacity test. And I thought this worked really well with the other day's events. Yeah. And since people have recently done it last year, a lot of them got to do it again and see where they're at. And this was a good talking point that we had, was comparing performance in end of July versus February, early March, when you did it a year and a half ago, or a year and a quarter ago, where you're extremely motivated, you're trained, you're ready for something like this. And how did you stack up? Was it a close performance? Was it far away? Was it an improvement? So that was good. That was a good conversation or a piece to discuss. But yeah, I just I like this test. It asks, there's let's see, I wrote down a few. I had a few pieces, not a few, actually, I had a lot of pieces that I talked about on this event. So I like that the length. So if you look at all the open workouts, the average length is about 12 to 13 minutes. That's the average of what you have to be working at a high rate for on average across over 10 years of open workouts now. So that's number one. So this is 14 minutes. So that's giving us a fairly similar length of tests that you would need to be competent at in the open. Now, you can obviously, as a side note, you can make an argument open's not that important. And I would partially agree with you on that. However, you still need to have great capacity. So you can't not do well in the open and do well in the other stages. Like you still have to show up and be able to do those events well. So it does have importance in that sense. So I like that. I like like I mentioned earlier, the volume's not excessive, so it's not going to break people down a ton. It's not a lot of work. It's just the way the work's laid out. It feels like a sufficient amount, and it challenges people in a fairly comprehensive way. So I like that. I like any type of test that doesn't force you to have to do a lot of work to get the outcome you want, which is separation between those that are capable and those that are not. Like the quarterfinal workout from 2021, the 60, 50, 40, 30, that's a perfect example of way too much work when after 120 reps, you would have had the same outcome as you would at 180. Like you're going to see the separation after 100 of all those movements. So you don't need to almost double it to just further cement what's already going to happen, which is some people are going to do that in 15 minutes and a lot of people are going to do it. They're going to get time capped. So that's the other thing I like about this event. And I also like chippers, like a chipper, which this is a chipper in a sense. Obviously it's an AMRAP, but it's a chipper. The chipper format where you have big chunks of work that you have to chip away at. And usually once you finish that movement, you don't do it again. This is a little different because if you are capable enough, you finish the muscle ups and you go back to the rower to start rowing. And then if you're really capable, you get to the toes to bar. So that's why it's a pseudo chipper. But with the chipper, it really asks you, or not asks, it's what would be the right word? It's requiring you to know whether or not you understand your pace and your capabilities with all these movements and how you put that together with the totality of the work. So you can't think of the 60 cal row in isolation. You have to think of the 60 cal row in the context of everything you need to be doing. And so what will happen is people will row too fast because they're not thinking about everything they have to do. And that just gets them out of pace from the start, and then they blow up, or they don't put up a good score, or they don't think about the 50 toes to bar in combination with everything else. And so they do too big of sets. They drive up too much core fatigue. That influences the cleans, that influences the muscle ups. So the chipper is really asking you to know your pace, look at each movement by itself, but then also in the totality of the work you have to do. And then most importantly, asks you to figure out what's the bottleneck, like what's the actual movement that matters. And the actual movement that matters in this test is the muscle ups. How many muscle ups can you get? That's what's going to separate people. So your strategy has to be about, how do I put myself in a position so when I get to the muscle ups, I can maximize my performance and do them all, or get a few reps, or get most of them. And so that's why I really like this test, is it challenges people on many different levels, and it shows those that are actually building the characteristics you need to be a good competitor or not. Because if you're not, which I saw a lot of people, I'll say a lot, maybe 5 or 6 of them at the camp who they're just not aware because they just probably haven't trained enough, and they just made a lot of mistakes that influenced their outcome as a result. And then we had some people who really knew themselves well and they had a great performance. And we had some people who were surprised, like they did better than they thought because they had more capability than they thought. Also speaks to that they kind of stayed within themselves. They didn't get ahead of themselves, which just put them in a position to do well. So I could probably go on more, but there's a lot that you can extract from that test, which is why I really like it. And it's just very simple.
Yeah. This is definitely one of my favorites as well as a KPI, because one, it's the real deal. Like it's an open workout. We've seen it multiple times. So, if you're performing it, you get to feel like you're doing the sport, not just like a specific test that we set up for whatever reason. And then all the things you named, like, there's a ton of movements and patterns that we get to see. So you're getting to see how they move through each one. If you're, say, watching one person, they're crushing the row, they're crushing the toes to bar, but their squat starts to look janky, or, their cleans aren't very smooth. And that's a characteristic maybe you could take out. Maybe it's cleans in general, or maybe it's just the fatigue. And then, work rate, how well are they managing the work rate? As they get more elite, can they push it, or are they dying, and it's too fast for them? The muscle up, and how they're attacking it, because it's not really an AMRAP, like you said, it's a chip or two. Like, you have to attack it a different way. And I just think it has so many characteristics that you could take away from, especially if you get to watch in person. A great test. So if you're not going to do any of these, and you're just going to do one, maybe if you're listening, film yourself doing that, and just try and look at it from a lot of different lenses, movement, how many breaks you're taking, how do you look compared to when you're doing these movements fresh. It's an awesome workout.
It was interesting at the camp. So I had two individuals who, I had three. There's three I'm going to speak on. Two of them, or all three of them, got into the second round in 2023. So two of them went out of the gates hot. They were pushing the row. They were aggressive on the toes to bar. So they were on track to get well into the second round. But by the time they got to the muscle ups, they started falling apart quite a bit. Like, the fatigue was accumulating really fast. And then the other gentleman, he started a lot slower. It was quite far behind them into the muscle ups, but he wasn't as fatigued as they were. And he was able to do, what do you do? Like 7, 6, 5, or like 7, 5, 5, 4 or something. I don't know. Something like that. Like, he did big sets, and he got back to the rower, and he had like 10 or 12 cows, which was great. I think that was a PR from when he did it, 2023. But it was a great talking point, because it just showed that it's not about getting to the movement first, because people make that error all the time in their thinking. They're like, if I get there first, I'll have more time to do the movement. It's like, well, you're forgetting that the cost of getting there first means more fatigue. So, like, if you do something faster, you're going to incur a lot more fatigue. And if you're not able to account for that when you get to that movement, you're going to be staring at the rings a lot more. So it's not a linear relationship where if I just get there faster, I have more time, I can do more reps. It's like, no, that's not how it works. So you have to think about, I probably need to get there a little bit slower. Maybe I have a minute less, but I'm able to do bigger sets because I'm less fatigued. I've accumulated less fatigue. You see this a lot in a lot of CrossFit tests. And it's great, because it's really challenging the athlete's ability to know themselves, to adjust their pacing strategy, to put themselves in a good position for the last movement. So that was great to see. And it was great. We had a good conversation with everyone on that. And yeah, great event. And a good one to do midway through the summer, just as a check-in, kind of see where you're at, see how your sport-specific work capacity is doing. Yeah.
All right. Day one done. Go to sleep. And then we got Sunday AM, a big AM, but it kind of quick, but still big. So with the first workout, going to build to a 1 rep max power clean.
Yep.
And then we got an 8-minute AMRAP at 90% of that 1 rep max.
Yes.
How long did you rest? Did you have a set timer, or did you just try and keep it around 10 minutes, did you set a clock?
So thankfully we were able to have everybody go in one heat, because that's usually the problem when you get over 20 people, is you got to do 2 heats. And ideally, I like to have people rest maybe 5 to 7 minutes after the 1 RM, which doesn't really work if you have multiple heats. So it worked out great that we could everybody builds up, rest 5 minutes, then do the AMRAP. So that's how we did it. I used to do like rest 10 minutes. But that's just too long. It just, obviously they're going to get colder. It's going to be a little bit harder. Just do the 1 RM, rest a little bit, and then get going. That just works better. And it's logistically, it's also great too. So, and I like this on Saturday morning. I do this every time at pretty much every camp, because most people do really well. They're fired, like nervous systems on point from yesterday's lifting. So they usually have a good 1RM. It's super simple because I've also done this test with people with a squat clean. You do like a 1RM squat clean, you do an AMRAP at 90% of the squat clean, which is obviously way more fatiguing and way more difficult. But not everybody can squat really well at heavy loads for a lot of reps. So with camps, I just do the power clean because it's very simple. Everybody can do it, even those that aren't that trained. It's so simple. And then it creates really good conversation on the results. So I do the power clean. Great test. Tells you a lot. We're obviously looking at your strength battery. So the analogy I kind of give people is when you lift heavy loads, you're tapping let's say your battery, and like any battery, it has a charge, say 100 units. So you lift 90% for a rep, and say you use 10 of those units, and let's say you have to get back to at least 95 units to lift again. So that's why you, of course, have to rest. Like you can't do one and then directly do another one. Like you have to rest a little bit because you have to recharge the battery to get to that threshold you have to be at every time. So this test is really assessing how quickly can you recharge that battery so you can keep accumulating reps. Because for men, over 24 is really good, assuming your max is 275 or above. Because if it's really low, then you'll probably get a lot more reps, which also signals that you're just probably not that trained. So it's kind of an outlier. But if you're fairly trained and you're over 275, then 24 plus reps is pretty good. And then ladies, 28 to 30 plus, because ladies are going to accumulate more reps. Without getting into the specifics on that, I think we've done an episode on strength training, and we've talked about different.
We've talked about this too.
Biology, yeah. So again, we're looking at how fast can you recharge that battery, because it's really important. That's a very important characteristic in the sport of CrossFit, is how well you can move with submaximal loads. And so this test it's an indirect test because you aren't going to see an 8-minute AMRAP at 90% in a competition, most likely. But it's good because most tests, we want a good derivative of what you might have to be doing in competition. That's why only one of all these tests people are doing over this weekend is an actual open workout. Everything else is a variation of something you might have to do in competition, minus the 1RM squat, snatch, or back squat, or bench press. And by doing so, we can get a proxy for this characteristic, where are you at with this characteristic, and then go work on it if needed, so that when we do compete, you're more prepared for that particular characteristic. So that's why I like this test, because it's very simple. And it creates really clear separation. You see really clearly like who can actually do this really well and who can accumulate a lot of reps at a high percentage of their max versus those that struggle, whether it's a technical thing or they just don't have the base of support to recharge that battery quicker. And so that's where when people are under 20 reps, that's usually a sign that, okay, that battery is just not recharging very fast. So we need to work on that, which you can do specific protocols and progressions to work on the battery, but you can also go more big picture, which is building your aerobic system, for lack of a better term, and building your general work capacity. So like your ability to recover from intense bouts of work. So the ability to recharge the battery is going to be heavily reliant on that system, because what you're recharging is your phosphocreatine stores, which is the stored energy in your muscles, which is why people take creatine, because that helps recharge that, amongst other things it does more quickly. So that's partially what you're trying to become better at, recharging faster so you can get back on the bar more quickly. So there's many things we can do in training to work on that.
Okay. So next event is the rate test, RATE.
Sure. I called it a skill test.
Yeah, I mean, To me, I just thought, I was like, man, this is a cool idea for people to see if you can plug in any movement, but for these movements, kind of like what they could keep for a 2-minute AMRAP. So maybe they could have a good idea in a workout. I got 48 pistols, 24 reps a minute. Maybe that 16 to 20 is my like smooth cadence that I could hold in a longer AMRAP, or it just
that's a good way to think about it.
That's what I thought. But cool workout nonetheless. Just thinking of a race too, if you were next to somebody.
So in the past, I would have people do the power clean, the battery test, and despite how it looks like on paper, people aren't super fatigued after that. If anything, like they're a little tired, but not that tired. It's because of just the loading. So I figured, okay, well let's do something else that's very polar to that, which would be body weight. So I've had people do various gymnastic type tests based upon like the ability level of the people there. In October, I did a camp and I had to do a toes to bar wall walk type, like ascending, descending ladder. It was like 7 to 9 minutes in length, just as a way to look at specific body weight capacity and how well you can perform there. And I didn't want to do that same test again, because when we did, I was like, yeah, it's interesting, but it's not really telling me a whole lot. Whereas I wanted to create like a skill test, like, okay, work at a high rate for multiple minutes and do a lot of different skills and add in rest there so that we could maintain a decent amount of quality and performance, but not full rest. So I wanted there to be some fatigue that was building. So I want to see how well people can handle that. So you have 2 minutes, 2 minute AMRAP of crossovers, 1 minute rest, 2 minute AMRAP of pistols, 1 minute rest, 2 minute AMRAP of handstand walking, 1 minute rest, 2 minute AMRAP double unders, 1 minute rest, 2 minute AMRAP strict handstand push-ups. So 10 minutes of work. And this was great because it showed us on paper who could work pretty much nonstop for the whole 2 minutes, every single movement, versus those that were running into limitations with performance of the skill, execution of the skill, or like can't even do the skill. So some people couldn't handstand walk, so they did wall walks, or they couldn't do handstand push-ups, so they did push-ups. And so that was a good talking point, because it goes, okay, well, these are all movements you need to be capable of in the sport. So one, if you can't even do them, that's a problem. So we got to work on being able to do them. And then two, we got to build up the capacity so you can work at a high rate for 2 minutes. And I chose 2 minutes because 1 minute, you're not going to see as much separation, but at 2 minutes, you will see more separation. It's not 5 minutes though, because at 2 minutes, you're starting to see the split in performance, like people going way up versus those kind of slowed down. Back to my like the quarterfinal workout with the 180 reps. Once you get to 100, maybe 120, I could see an argument for 120 reps, you will start seeing the split, because people will just go faster. Like that's what happens if you pull back the volume a little bit, you'll see the separation through speed as opposed to like pure endurance of the qualities required for those movements. So like with 180 reps in that quarterfinal workout, there was speed, but in my opinion, it was more the separation and deterioration of the movements. So those that were really capable, that the movements were deteriorating less slowly, so they kept a faster rate the entire time. Whereas if it was 120 reps, you'd probably see, or maybe 100 to 120, you'd see more speed. So with this test, the goal here was speed, like, because 2 minutes is short. Like, can I work nonstop in the crossovers for 2 minutes? Can I move nonstop in the pistols, handstand walk doublers, etc.? So it was a really first time I've done it, and I liked it a lot. It definitely gave me some good insights for a lot of my clients and things we need to work on. And I just like too is body weight. There's something to be said about being great with your body in CrossFit. And so something simple like this can just give a little insight on, okay, where are we at? And are there things we need to prioritize a little bit more to bring up?
Yeah. What was the top scores here? Like what was, or maybe not numbers, but like where did you see something that was very impressive? Like, did you see someone, hit 40 strict handstand push-ups after all of this, or?
No, the best I saw was 35. I'm looking at my little Excel sheet. 35. Yeah, he was the shortest guy. He was very short. I figured around 30 would be good, 30 plus for that.
Did anyone get over 200 dubs?
Yeah, I had 2 people over 200. The 2 people that were over 200 went over 200 on the crossovers. So Dan went 242 on crossovers, and then 223 on double unders. He went unbroken on both of them.
That's solid.
So yeah, and then I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people over 200 feet or more on the handstand walk, which is pretty good.
Really good too.
That's fast. And then the pistols
over 50.
So I had one. Yeah, I had somebody. The guy that got 35 strict handstand push-ups, he did 80 pistols because again, he's like 5 feet tall. So that was a good talking point. Like, okay, there's some correlation here with limb length, so that's good. But then when he had to do wall balls the day before, he's like, "How do I get better at wall balls?" I'm like, "Well, you're 5 feet tall. You're just not going to be good at that movement. But there's about 100 other things you're going to be good at, so don't worry about it."
Yeah.
And yes, and then I had quite a few people in the 50s and then some in the 60s. Dan had 63, and then quite a few, low to mid 50s. And then, that was it. So what I was telling people was around 200 crossovers would be really solid. That means you're probably moving consistently the entire time. The pistols, close to 50, which would be 25 a minute. That's pretty good. And the handstand walking, around 200 would be really good because that means you're doing 100 a minute, which is pretty fast. It's 50 every 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's
double unders over 200, and then handstand push-ups. I was like, by that point, after all that work, over 30 would be good. Of course, elite, they're probably going to get closer to 40, but over 30.
Was the handstand walk did they have the option to continue to a full 50, or was it 25?
No. Yeah, just because of space, we had to do. We'd have people going one way, and then like it was like a T. So you had some people going, side to side, and then down and back, and so it was 25 segments. So it was good. It was close. So some people were running into each other a little bit. Almost had a few accidents, but we made it work.
Dude,
so that was good.
Can't bake a cake without cracking a few eggs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right. Sunday PM. This workout. Oh my gosh, it's 75 pounds. Never mind.
You did it. This is the same one you did.
I did it with 95.
No, I've always done it with 75. It's always been 75.
No, you did it with 95 with Nick and right?
Nick? No, Austin.
Nick Block and Colleen and
when?
What's the Badger? What was her name again? Was that her nickname?
Oh, Christine?
Christine, yeah.
No,
you gave it to them.
When?
Before we did, like, this was like the year Christine went to the games, I think.
Okay, 2020.
And I think you did this workout, but you did 95, or did you just do more reps?
Oh, you know what? Maybe I did it with 95, and it was like, this is way too much.
Yeah, because you gave it to me with 95, and I couldn't complete it.
Yeah,
the third set, and then at the camp we did it again. I did it with 75, and I completed it.
Yeah, that's right. And I might have added. There might have been more reps too.
Yeah, I think it was. For some reason,
well, you know
I
what?
want to say it was something else was different, but yeah.
I real quick, because I know exactly what it was, because I just gave it to one of my clients, the guy who's going to the games in for the Masters, James, 40 to 44. He's doing it next week as kind of like just a prep piece, something to sting. So I'll put it in the comments or so you can see. I can right here. So this is, oh geez, the formatting's horrible, but it's 3 sets
I don't even see it.
21 chest to bar, 18 thrusters. Oh yeah, private chat. 21 chest to bar, 18 thrusters, 45 pounds, 15 bar facing burpee, 12 thrusters, 95 pounds, 9 chest to bar. I put 40 kilos, but
yeah, that
so
was it.
I did this one time. No, it was 2. I did it 2 sets for time. This would have been like 2015, but I did it with 115, and I had like 6 or 8 minutes rest between, but it was so uncomfortable. And then I was trying to think of like a fatigue repeatability test to give those guys getting closer to competition with very sport specific movements. And so I was like, oh, I could just do that for multiple sets, because 3 sets would get you to 90 chest to bar, 90 thrusters, and then 45 burpees, which is great. That's very like volume or functional volume type numbers. And then I gave it to them, and it was too much, because I think I did it every 5 minutes, and that was way too much. And so they died. I was like, well, if they're going to die, then everybody else is going to die. Yeah. And so, I guess I gave it to you before I made that realization. So you got crushed. And so then at the camp, I go, okay, I need to dial this back. And so then I shifted it to 21 chest bar every 5 minutes for 3 sets, 21 chest bar, 15 thrusters at 75 and 55, 12 bar facing burpees, 9 thrusters, 75, 55, and 6 chest bar. So volume's a lot less. It's lighter, but it's still very sneaky.
It's potent.
It's very potent. Yeah. And you just see it's like enough to where people can get messed up, especially if they're not that fit.
Yeah.
But even if they are fit, if they push it too much, they will get messed up too. And then those that are really fit, they like push it and it's tough, but they're in control and they feel good and they just crush everybody. So it's like just the right combination where it's enough.
It's really that final set. It's like when you hit the burpees on set 3, there's like there's decisions you have to make. Yes. And it's a great test though. But you have to be ready for it.
Yeah. The first set's great because, and it's funny too, because every time it's like we have our talk, the morning's done. It's like, okay, we got one thing left, and I always save the best for last. And everybody's like, oh no, this is gonna be the worst, and everybody's like dreading it. And then they do the first set, and everybody's like, oh, okay, it's not too bad. Like, all right, I feel pretty good. And I'm like, yeah, false sense of security right there. And then they do the second set, and then those that are really fit are like, okay, yeah, it's a little bit, I'm feeling it. And then the people that are not are like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. And then they do the third set, and quite a few they just slow down a lot. That's what happens. They break them up. They're like, oh, my grip's blowing up. It's like, it's because you're not fit. And then people that are fit, they're pushing it the whole time. So that's why I like it. Again, less is more, but create separation through just more speed and then better recoverability. So like high level, people are going to be doing 2 minutes or less for every set, which is really fast. And I've seen that multiple times. The best of the camp. So Dan went, and I told him to, I was like, just push it really hard, because I want you to let's just see. Because he had a tendency when we first started, like he would just light himself on fire and burn to a crisp. And he's been learning how to like regulate that. So he does a good job now of pacing and executing the work at the rate he should be going at. But I was like, just go for it. So he went 2 minutes, 2:01, and then 2:16. So the last one, the final, the 9 thrusters, he was pausing for a second at the top of each of them. It was like he was working really hard, and so he finished that. So that was the best sequence. And then Skyla went 2:13, 2:18, 2:18, which was really good. That was the first time she's done it. So usually I'll see the first 2 somewhat close, and then a decent drop off on the third. So I'm kind of looking at, because again, we're working with roughly functional volume, like the amount of volume you need to be competent with these movements inside the sport. The burpee's just kind of in there it's just kind of in there. It's not that, it's like enough to where it makes a difference, but the volume isn't that significant. It acts as it's like a frustrating little hurdle you got to get over to get to the final 15 reps. So the first thing I kind of looked at,
I found my scores for reference from
okay, what'd you get?
211, 210, 229.
Yeah, I remember that.
Finish.
That third one, you were hurting. You were pushing it fast because Austin was pushing it.
Yes.
The first two were good, and then that last one, you were hurting.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good effort though. That was good, and that was September.
Yeah, September 21.
Yep. So good output for that time of year. So first thing I'm looking at is like actual time, like how fast can you actually do this in? Because that's going to give me insight into speed and also capabilities with the movements. Then the next thing I'm going to look at is the spread across the three. So what was the first score? How much did you drop off on the second, if at all? How much did you drop off on the third? I haven't looked closely enough at the data I have on like the gap between the first and the third, like how big of a drop. That would actually be interesting. There's probably something I could extract from that. Like you want less than a 10% gap or something like that. Let's see, 2 minutes would be 120 seconds. That would be 12 seconds would be a 10% drop. So Dan went from 2 minutes to 2:16. So that's a little bit more. That's almost like 15%. It's 15% of it. So not terrible. Whereas like Skyla, she only had a 5-second drop. So and that was something we chatted about. The Cam was like, for her, it would be her to just get her to go faster, be able to go faster with the movements. Whereas Dan, it would be building work capacity such that his recoverability is better, so he can do another 2-minute interval in the third one. So I look at score, I look at spread across the intervals. I also look at how are you fatiguing? So was it a grip thing? Was it a breathing thing? Was it a leg thing? Like what fatigue mechanism are you experiencing as you go through this? Because that's going to give us insight into what could be a limiting factor in your performance, and then something we can go work on. But this is a great test to do leading into competition. So 2-3 weeks out, you could do this. 2 weeks out, and you could do it 3-4 months out, get a good insight on where you're at. And if the scores are good, great, keep kind of plugging along. If there's some room for improvement or things that need to be shored up or shortened up, then you can go into training and work on those things. So that's how I would that was what I told a lot of people was, you're doing this obviously in July. So unless you're competing in the next few weeks, which Skyla is going to be competing, Dan's going to be competing, some of them are not. That's something you want to keep in mind when you're interpreting the results, because if you are away from competition, you then need to ask, like, well, what components am I working on? Am I trying to get stronger, more powerful? If so, you'll probably see more of a drop off. Maybe your first repeat will be pretty fast, and then you'll see more of a drop off. Versus if you're working on your capacity and trying to become more enduring, then there should be a tighter spread across the three. And maybe the top end speed is better as well, but maybe it is a little bit slower, because if you're not doing any high speed, high turnover work, then you're going to be limited in the speed that you're going to move through these intervals at. Assuming that volume wasn't a problem, because that can limit you also. But if you're trying to get faster, like Skyla, she hasn't been doing a lot of really high speed work, so her system's just not going to be as ready for something like this. But that's a simple fix. You do a little bit of training of that, and she's good to go. So simple test, gives us a lot of good insight, and allows us to finish with a bang, because it's definitely potent.
Definitely. Yeah. It would be a great event to see in competition, I think, or at least something very similar where it's every 5 minutes.
Scores,
your total
your scores like or your score is your worst set. You could do something like that. That could be cool.
Yeah.
But that's always fun.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that actually would be good. Yeah. It's just a good, but good in general. and it's good to put it towards the end. You're tired, you have to fight the fatigue.
Exactly. That's the other
of like a little bit of the mental fatigue too, like you're kind of wanting to
Mhm.
be done. But
Exactly.
yeah, so the camp, 2 full days here, 5 events, five sessions ish,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, 5 sessions.
and this could be really insightful for some people just from learning, but also, like we said, being around the other athletes would be great.
Mhm.
What are some big takeaways that you saw people have from the camp that maybe like you weren't intentionally trying to, or maybe you don't even know yet, but did someone tell you, hey, like this was great, I learned this, or
Mhm.
you know
Yeah, I think each person, I think they all learned, because I try to make an effort, especially if it's like 20 people or less. I try to make an effort to give each of them actionable items for their training. So things that they can be thinking about that they need to be working on. And then of course those that are my clients, it's easy, but especially for people who aren't, it's like, okay, here's what I'm seeing. These are things you could be doing. This is how I would probably do it. So I try to make sure everybody's walking away with actionable things they need to be working on, which is preceded by a better understanding of where they're kind of at with their fitness based on my tests that I'm giving them. So they're learning more about where they currently are at, so that then they can go take action on improving those things and bringing up their weak points. So I think that's usually when I talk with people or debrief, that's a big takeaway for them, is they all learn a lot about their fitness and where
yeah
they're at, and also the thinking behind it for me, like how I'm thinking about this information and how I'm taking the information and using it to make decisions with what I'm going to give people. So that's the big goal for me, outside of people enjoying themselves and being with others, is making sure each person's walking away more knowledgeable about not only fitness, especially in how I think of fitness, but in their own fitness and what things they can be working on moving forward to keep improving.
Okay. I won't ask anything else because I don't want to push the time too much. But if you would like to do a camp, reach out to Sam. If you'd like to host a camp, reach out to Sam, or I could. We'll figure it out, the details. But if you would just like to do these workouts, you could, I guess, listen back to the episode. You could see what we
Yeah.
talked about, the strength ratios Sam mentioned. Let's go back.
I mean, if you do them in a weekend, send me the results. You can email them to me. I can send you some. I'll send you
A
some
summary.
short thoughts on. Yeah, I'll send you a short summary of how you did and
Send them
what
a
things you
loom.
can work on. Probably, because that'd be faster than writing it
Yeah.
out. Yeah, probably send them a loom.
So just recap: we got the strength ratios. We got a real, a test, an actual sports test, and we talked about a ton of things you could be taking away from that. We got the power clean. We talked about that. We've talked about it in other episodes as well. Then we got the skill tests. How well can you maintain these skills? How good are you at doing them at speed? And how well can you recover between them as well? For some people, a lot of things you could learn from that one. Then we got the, how good are you at repeating your hard efforts, or like how strong are you, how efficient are you, and how willing are you, to put in the work. So a good way to cap it off. But yeah, like Sam said, send us your scores. If you want to send them to me, I can get them over to Sam for you. If you don't have his contact, or however, if you just don't know how to work the social medias. But we hope you guys took something away from this. Any final words from it? Any final thoughts?
No, I thought that was good, and yeah, I hope some people go do the test.
Yeah, it's great. And again, these change. The camps are great just to learn a lot of different things from the coach, and the coach Sam learning from the participants as well. So if we have another camp coming up anytime soon, you guys will know. And we hope you guys have a great day. Please like, subscribe. If you're this far without subscribing, just hit the button for us. That would be great. So have a great day, everybody.